Finish cooking up our Cornish game hens, and then we will be making some caramelized carrots and onions, potatoes, broccoli, and honey butter cornbread. So I've actually seasoned up my Cornish game hens and have had them baking for about 30 to 45 minutes in the oven, and now we're gonna baste them. So for our Cornish game hens, I season them with a mixture of onion powder, paprika, garlic salt, Mrs. Dash's table blend, thyme, and rosemary. And then I put 2 cups of chicken broth in the bottom of my pan, and to give it a nice little steam. And we're just gonna kind of just drizzle this, a little bit of this over each one. But I mixed my dry rub together with about, I wanna say, like a 1/3 cup of olive oil, maybe a little bit more. So it created a nice kind of, you know, paste that I then rubbed all over my little game hens here. So it just has this nice, great savory flavor. I crushed my rosemary and my thyme up before I added in my other spices, so it'd be a little bit finer on there. So we're kind of basting them, keeping them nice and moist. I do not have them stuffed. That allows them to cook a little bit faster and keeps them, I think, just a little bit nicer cooked. So I'm gonna last bit of my broth over here. And then we're gonna pop these back in the oven and we're gonna continue roasting them. These take about 1 hour and 15 minutes to cook up until they're all the way cooked through, and then you always let them rest for a few minutes. But let's get our game hens back in the oven to finish roasting here. My oven right now is set at, they first cooked at 425, but we are going to be finishing them off at 350 because that's what my sourdough bread, or not my sourdough, my cornbread, my sourdough cornbread needs to bake at. Actually, I'm just doing honey butter cornbread. So we're gonna put them back in here, but we do the first part at 425. That gives it a nice crispy sin. And then the second part we're gonna do at 350 so that we can cook our cornbread in there as well. And we're also gonna roast up some broccoli. Okay, while our Cornish game hens, got lots of things, are cooking up, let's start. I'm gonna start caramelizing my onions for my carrot dish, and then we will whip up our cornbread and kind of get the rest of that going. Let me grab my knife over here.
You have a question? How long at 425?
So they take 1 hour and 15 minutes. And after the first 45 minutes, that's when I will take them out and I will drizzle them with a little bit of the juices that have come down, and then we'll do that a couple more times just to keep them really moist for it. But I always let them cook for a good 45 minutes first before basting them so they get that nice crispy skin. So altogether, it's 1 hour and 15 minutes. There we go. So we're gonna just saute up our onion. I was out of my good yellow onions, so we're using a red onion here because I need to go grocery shopping. I am out of everything in my house. It's funny how it's like the end of the week and I'm like, where did all of my food gone? I felt like I bought enough food to feed a small army, and yet it is always gone at the end of the week. I'm like, I have no vegetables. I have no onions. You know, it's just interesting how fast it goes. Okay, let's I'm gonna do long and skinny because we're gonna do our carrots long and skinny. And I'm gonna start cooking these up and we'll kind of get a nice caramelization. I don't know why I'm putting, I almost put Diet Dr. Pepper in there. My brain is on the fritz. We're gonna put a little bit of olive oil in this pan. I will use a little bit of butter when we do our brown sugar for the base of it because they're gonna be a sweet carrot dish. But we're gonna start with our onions here. And I'm just gonna have them cook over a medium heat until they kind of caramelize up. Luckily, we're gonna be adding a little bit of brown sugar, so even though red onions aren't the best onion to use for this dish, the brown sugar will mask that. So do nice kind of medium heat in there. And while we're waiting for those to cook up, we're gonna make our cornbread. Just get a little bit of that onion off of my hand. Okay, for our cornbread, this is a honey butter cornbread. So we're gonna baste it with a little bit of honey butter after we bake it. but we'll have honey in it as well. So we're gonna start out with our wet ingredients. I have 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk, but if you don't have buttermilk, which I don't, so I actually made my own variation of it. I used half cream, half milk, and then I squeezed a little bit of half of a lemon over it. So it will give you that kind of chunkiness that buttermilk has, as well as that tart flavor. Because in reality, unless you use a lot of buttermilk, nobody has it. But you can make your own substitutes that work just great. So 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk, or your, homemade variation of it. And then we're gonna add in 2/3 cup of sugar. You can use brown sugar if you want more of a molassesy flavor to your cornbread, but granulated sugar also works wonderful. Keeps the color a little bit lighter. And we're gonna do 2/3 a cup of our granulated sugar. Slide this guy over here. And then we're gonna add in about 2 tablespoons of honey. And we will also be using honey in our honey butter glaze. Little more. And those are guesstimations on tablespoons. Honey's just delicious. Let's mix this in here, the sugar into our, and the honey into our milk, our buttermilk, and we're gonna just kind of dilute it there. And then I'm gonna add in my eggs and my butter. There we go. Let's do our 2 eggs. So 1 and 2. And then I have a 1/2 cup of melted butter, which is 1 stick. And I am using salted butter. And we're gonna mix these all into our ingredients here. Give it a nice little poke. There we go.
You have a question? Do you like farmers markets?
I do love farmers markets. I used to go all the time. I used to get a CSA share, like a little crop share from picked up. But then my children had youth sports, and youth sports monopolizes your weekends. And so our farmer market here is always on Saturdays, but we are never, and it's only Saturday mornings, and we are never free Saturday mornings. But I do love a good farmer's market. I love the atmosphere, especially in Iowa, when I was back at, Iowa State University, when I was going to college there, they always had one there from all the local farmers, and I just loved it. It's just the best food ever, and the little crafts and stuff are always just fun to look at. Okay, we've got our wet ingredients in there. I feel like our farmer's market here, since Nashville has exploded and boomed, Nashville has a big one, but Williamson County, we have the Franklin Farmers Market, which I used to love, but now I feel like it's become like so big. You can't ever find parking, which then it just is not as fun. Okay, let me grab my little measuring spoons, and we're gonna add in our salt and our baking soda. So we're gonna use a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So most of the corn muffin, it's getting the pop is from the egg and this baking soda here. So a 1/2 teaspoon, and then we're gonna add in our salt, and we're gonna use a 1/2 teaspoon of salt as well.
A little off topic, but what's your doctorate in again?
Educational leadership and policy. So my undergrad was in early childhood, and I had 2. So I had early childhood education and then special education. My master's is a combination, is early childhood special education. And then my doctorate, I went into the leadership, the policy form. And I have to say, my favorite part of my doctorate, which, go Doors, I got it from Vanderbilt, was the law aspect. I really liked educational law and policies and the things behind that. Maybe it's because I always like to argue, but I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I just thought it was really interesting, the information behind policies and why they were created and what they're based on. I found really interesting. Okay, we've got our baking soda and our baking powder mixed into our cornbread. This is the time where you really want to get your good mixing in, because once we add our flour in, you want to minimize how much you mix it so that it stays nice and fluffy. We're going to add in a cup of flour and a cup of cornmeal. And I'm just using all-purpose flour. So we got 1 cup of flour. And then cornmeal. My kids came home and they were like, can you please make cornbread for dinner tonight? And I was like, if I have cornmeal, because I know I had used it up the other day, but luckily I remembered to buy more cornmeal. So we're going to add in a cup of cornmeal and we'll mix these guys up. There we go. I've got like a little pocket, there you go. And then we're gonna mix them until they're just combined, but again, you don't wanna over mix them. This is a butter base, and if you over mix your butter base for this, it's going to make a stiffer muffin. So we're gonna get these guys mixed in there until they're just combined. And then we'll scoop them out. We're gonna do them in mini loaves, which is gonna allow it to cook up a little bit faster than if you do it in a big, like an 8x8 or a 9x9. There we go. And you want your cornbread to be lumpy, so resist the urge to mix it till it's smooth, because again, that will give you a stiffer cornbread, and you want it to be nice and light and fluffy. So here is the delicious base to our cornbread. Now, if you wanted to, you can add in about a half a cup of frozen corn or like canned corn to give you those real chunks of corn. And I love it, but none of my kids or my husband seem to like it or appreciate the real corn. I think it's delicious. But you could add that in there. And if you're one of the crazy people who likes jalapenos in there, you could add in some of those, but I'm going to say that's crazy. Jalapenos do not belong in cornbread. It should just be sweet and delicious.
If I want vegetables in my food, I'll grow some bunny ears.
My husband. You know, I thought when we first met that he had such a great veggie palate and everything, because he ate everything I made. Never commented about the vegetables. Ate them all. And then I was like, as soon as we were married, he was like, oh yeah, I don't eat vegetables anymore, except potatoes. Now he will eat carrots and Brussels sprouts as long as they're cooked with the bacon. And I've gotten him to get on broccoli, but that is about it. And, you know, you can't even go crazy. You can't even add cheese to your potatoes. He doesn't want cheese on his potatoes. He just wants them boring. You know, it's just sad. We're missing out on all the great food. Okay, so we're filling these up, and then I'm just filling them up a little bit, and then I'll go back over and kind of even them out. You know, that way I find do a little bit first and then go back and even them, so you're not having to re-scoop some because you put too much in one. And fill these guys up. You can also do these in a muffin tin if you want. They'll just cook up a little bit faster. So these guys take, you know, between 22 and 25 minutes in your mini loaf pan. If you do like a 9x9 or an 8x8, then it's going to take a little bit longer, like 35 minutes, to get that middle all the way cooked through. Muffins will take closer to 20 minutes. So pick your size, choose it. I love the mini loaf because, you know, you get the edges that you get, which you don't get with a muffin tin, and they're still very moist and tender. I feel like when you cook them in the bigger pans, those edges always dry out. Here we go. Scoop this up. And then I'm just gonna get a little paper towel and clean up my sides so that it isn't too messy. If you clean it up now, then you don't have to scrape it off once it's baked on. we go. And then these are gonna bake in the oven at 350 for about 22 minutes. You give this a quick toss. I'm gonna turn it down. Now I'm gonna have to, because I want my cornbread to bake on my top rack, I'm gonna have to do a little rearranging here. So let me pop these guys out for just a second. You can see how gorgeous they look. And then I'm going to move up this. Let's see if I have enough room here. Beautiful. Just barely. But it should work nonetheless. And then we're going to get these guys right up here. I'm going to bake them in. My oven's set at 350. And you know what? My timer is already on for 21 minutes, so we're just going to leave that one on. That's what my timer was for my chicken, to make sure I got that full hour and 15. So you're going to bake those for 22 minutes. So once that timer goes off, I know I have got a little bit to go there for it. Let's get our potatoes cooking up, and then we'll get our carrots in here and going. I'm gonna put some olive oil in here. Let me grab a little bit more.
Rose needs to know, do you wear sandals outside in the cold?
Oh gosh, no. I wear sandals around the house because we have lots of pets and kids, and I just don't like, my bare feet on the ground. But outside, in the summer, yes, outside all the time. In the winter, I switch to Uggs. So everyone jokes that I wear 2 pairs of shoes. I wear Uggs and I wear sandals. And I just rotate between us. And so today we had a soccer game outside and it was 40 degrees. And I wore Uggs and bundled up. But there is no middle shoe. The only time I wear any other shoe is if I have to look nice, I'll wear a dress-up shoe. Or when I'm working out, I will wear tennis shoes because you can't really work out in flip-flops. Although I have tried. It does not work well for it. But yes, I really do enjoy comfort above everything else on there. And I have really big feet. You might not know it, but I have big feet. They're like an 11 and a half, which is huge. And they used to be smaller, but they grew with every baby that I had. Which I didn't know was a thing until I started having babies. They were a 10 and now they're an 11 and a half. And it's really hard to find shoes that big that don't look like clown feet shoes. So we stick with our nice, lovely sandals. And on top of this, I have really wide feet, and that is probably my doing. Growing up, my mom used to always tell me, if you wear flip-flops all the time, your feet are going to be flat and wide. And, I wore flip-flops like 6 months a year. That's the only shoe I wore 6 months a year. And my feet are flat and wide. And so, maybe she was telling the truth and I should have listened, but I did not. I've got hobbit feet. Okay, we're going to dice up our potatoes here. I'm using some red potatoes. That will be, they're nice, kind of waxy, and will fry up nicely. I'm going to do a richer seasoning on it because I feel like red potatoes can take that nice hearty flavor. So we're going to use some rosemary and thyme, similar to what we have on our chicken, so that they all kind of come together well. But these are a richer potato, so I feel like they could take those more hearty spices. Okay. Now let me realize my pan is not heating up here. I'll get that heated up. Go. Plus I was going through and I was like, oh, what potatoes do I have to work with? It was slim pickings in my fridge today, but I think we're going to come out with a pretty fantastic meal nonetheless. There we go. 4 more to go. And then we're gonna get these frying up. I'm gonna saute them real quick in the olive oil. Then we're gonna put a lid on to kind of do a steam saute. And then I will season them up towards the end because I don't want my spices to stick and burn prematurely to my pan. And that way also the spices just are nice and fragrant at the very end. Okay. So here is my bounty of potatoes. Slide these guys in here. And then I'm gonna make sure I coat them all up with the olive oil that we have in there because potatoes are like sponges. And if I don't coat them up now, there won't be any on the top layer because that first bottom layer is gonna just suck it all up. Here we go. I know I was thinking about going out to my garden and pick some fresh herbs, but it's really cold. And I know it's probably, for most people, it's not that cold, but it was like 40 degrees and I was like, not today.
What's your favorite brand of olive oil?
You know, I really don't have a favorite brand. I have a favorite price, and it's whatever's on sale. So Publix often does the buy one, get one free, and then I stock up with whatever's that is on there, because, you know, I'm not really using it for dipping bread in. Dipping bread in, yeah, you want a good quality oil, but I'm pretty much using it to cook with, and so I don't kind of care as much about that flavor because it's really prominent when you cook. So to me it's whatever's on sale.
And do you prefer olive oil over avocado?
Yes, I do prefer olive oil over avocado, although they both work very, very similar. I just find that olive oil is a little bit cheaper, but I've used both of them and kind of worked with, but I do prefer it. And most of my cooking, I know, like with olive oil, you can't do it as high of heat, but I rarely cook on things that are above its burning point. So even when I do my fried foods, I like to fry at around 350, which is kind of good. And it just makes it simple because, you know, you've got like only so much space in your kitchen, and if you have like 1,000,001 bottles of things, you know, you run out of space really, really quickly. So I just like to keep it simple and just have, you know, like one bottle of oil, so I don't need to have, you know, 5 different ones. Now, the only other one is if I do Asian cooking, I will use sesame oil, but that's because sesame oil has such a distinct flavor that you really need it because it really brings out that nuttiness that's just kind of really lovely in Asian cooking. Okay, I'm peeling up my carrots here. We're going to kind of quarter them and cut them into smaller bits, and we'll caramelize them up with our onions so that we can make this just delicious brown sugar caramelized onions and carrots. It's one of my favorite ways to do carrots, and this is one of the vegetables that my husband does like, so it's a bonus there. Now this is, if you want to do this where it's streamlined, easier, you can buy fresh carrots that are like baby carrots that are called microwavable carrots, but they're fresh. Those, you can just take them out of the bag and cook them right in there because they're small enough that they will cook up fast enough for you. So those are if I need to make like a whole bunch of these. So like last weekend I made caramelizing carrots and onions for this meal I catered for friends. And it's just easier to just open up all those bags and do it instead of having to trim up all the carrots. Okay, so ideally you don't want your carrots to be too thick so that they can get nice and tender quickly, while also not getting mushy. So we're kind of cutting them into almost like a matchstick size to them. A little bit bigger, but not as big as like carrot sticks, I should say. And then we're gonna get these tossed in with our onions, but you always wanna let your onions caramelize up first because they won't get that good flavor on them if you try to cook them at the same time as the carrots. The carrots will hog all the heat and they'll just never get that caramelization. There we go. I'm going to actually throw this first back in over here. Then we can give myself a little bit more room.
You have a question? Would roasting the potatoes be faster?
You can definitely roast your potatoes in the oven, and I could have done it, but I would then have to get this oven going, which means taking all of my stuff out of the oven, because I have my space is a premium in my oven over there, so I figured I can fry them up on here. The nice thing about frying the potatoes up is you get a little bit more of a crisp on them, where oven I feel you get a little tender and softer crisp, because you're gonna get these like fried edges. I'm gonna flip these here, let them cook for one thing, and then we'll throw the lid on them. And the nice thing, I'm using Hexclad pans, and the Hexclad have a nice little vent hole on them, so it allows some of the steam to come out, so it doesn't make them too soggy, but it traps in a lot of heat, so it gives you, you know, a steam cook on there as well. There we go. Get these last guys up in there. These, again, for a carrot, these are just one of my favorite ways, because you get that sweet and savory with it, because I'll use garlic salt to season these up, as well as a little bit of brown sugar and then some butter, and it just hits just right. Because they're not too sweet like a candied carrot, or you know, like it is, but they've got that nice sweet and savory. Okay, almost have these guys done. And then we're gonna prep our broccoli, which we're gonna roast in the oven on there, and they won't take too long to cook up. Okay, we're gonna toss these with the carrots, kind of coat them in that olive oil, and there we will add butter again towards later when we're making that kind of brown sugar sauce on them, but I start with oil first so that the butter doesn't, you know, the milk solids don't burn. Okay, let me grab my 2 lids for these. 1 and 2. And then let's flip these potatoes. We will season up our potatoes towards the end so that they'll get their all their flavor on it, but you don't have to worry about it sticking to the bottom of your pan.
Where do you get your supper ideas?
You know, whatever looks good in my fridge and I come together. I know how to cook a lot of different things, and so I just kind of feel like, what would work well together? Sometimes I get inspiration if I'm like, you know, just get, you know, the doom scrolling, you get chapped in there, and sometimes I'm like, ooh, that looks good, I'm gonna make that. Or an idea. The Cornish gate hens, I saw them and I was just like, oh, I haven't had those in a while. I love them. And so I grabbed them at the store last week to cook up, and then yeah, I was like, oh, we'll have them. And part of that is growing up, my stepdad always made my mom Cornish game hens for her birthday. And so we would have, everyone would have their own individual game hen, and it was something really special that he did for my mom every year. And so it was just something I always done, and so we always had it once. Now he did his, he made like the green butter, which was green onions and butter, and just poured it over. So I've elevated his, you know, things throughout the years, but that's kind of like how, you know, I came to know Cornish game hens, because I feel like if you've never heard of them or eaten them before, it's not something that shows up. But they're not expensive. They're like $5 a bird. I mean, they're in the freezer section, like where you buy frozen like turkeys and whatnot. But they are lovely. We're gonna melt up our butter, because we're gonna do a little garlic butter over our broccoli to roast up in the oven. And we're gonna grab our Cornish game hens out again, and we're gonna kind of coat them with their little basting, the little juices, and finish them off in there.
Someone asked, what's my favorite meal? And Yo said salmon. What do you think it is?
I think his favorite meal would probably be either my ravioli or my beef Wellington, or because that was the first meal I ever made for my husband. Was I was trying to show off, so I made him beef Wellington. So I think those there. He loves my ravioli, which is strange because he does not like pasta, but my homemade ravioli he loves. So, but it's definitely not fish. He begrudgingly eats fish. I love fish, and our children love fish, so he has no say in it.
You have a question? Are Cornish game hens gamey?
No, they taste like, they're like your individual chicken. They're not, they're more like chicken than turkey, so they're juicier. They're not as dry as turkey, because turkey can get very dry. They're lovely. I feel like they're your perfect personal chicken if you want it, they're kind of just perfect. Or if you want to do a Thanksgiving dinner, but there's only one of you or two of you, do 2 little game hens, and that's kind of perfect for it. Because then you get the best of all, you get your own thing, and they're super cute too. So I'm gonna add in about 2 teaspoons of garlic in here with my butter. We just want it to kind of crisp up, and we're gonna drizzle that over our broccoli, and then we'll add some Parmesan cheese. Get our carrots here. I'm gonna turn this up, and we're gonna kind of coat them and let them steam cook here. You can see they're starting to get a little bit darker in color, which means they're getting more tender. When they're still like a really bright whitish orange, that means they're still very firm. Give our garlic a little swirl. I want it to kind of infuse in this butter. This is one of my favorite ways to do broccoli that is not a steamed broccoli. I feel like steamed broccoli is almost the only way you ever get broccoli. But melt butter and garlic together, pour it over your broccoli, with a little garlic, salt, and Parmesan cheese, and roast it in the oven, and it's just fabulous. There we go. And then we're just going to drizzle this over. Try to make sure each gets a little bit of this garlic butter. And then when you're done, you just got to make sure you toss them in the residual butter on the bottom of the pan. And get that garlic on there, because it's just wonderful. Okay. We're going to sprinkle with a little bit of garlic salt because it makes the world go round. And then Parmesan cheese. And I think Parmesan works well with the garlic. I know you can always do cheddar cheese and broccoli. That's like a common combination. But Parmesan works better with the garlic.
How do you keep the garlic from burning?
Coating it in the butter and whatnot kind of gives it a nice little protection, but these don't need long in the oven, so they don't really burn up. They'll get a little crispy, but they never really burn. Okay, let's give these each a quick toss, and then we're gonna head to the oven. There we go. And I'm gonna take out my Cornish game hens so we can also drizzle them, and we can sneak a peek at our cornbread. Which is almost ready. Let me give it a good swirl around. You know what? Perfect timing. They actually got done a few minutes early. Look at this beautiful cornbread. I'm going to set it right over here. And then I'm going to grab my Cornish game hens. I think it cooked a little bit faster because I had it on the top, which is a little bit higher than normal. No biggie. We're going to bring these guys over. We're going to baste them one more time, and then we'll pop them back in the oven. And then I'll grab my cornbread. And then I'll talk about our seasonings here one more time that we have on there. Let me get my cornbread over here as well, because we got to make our honey butter drizzle. Okay. I'm going to slide these a little bit closer. Okay, so with our Cornish game hens, you are going to pat them dry, and then you're gonna make a lovely seasoning blend using rosemary, and I used about a tablespoon of rosemary, a tablespoon of thyme, about 2 tablespoons of paprika, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, and then 2 tablespoons of Mrs. Dash's table blend, and then 2 tablespoons of garlic salt.
A couple questions. How long for the broccoli, and where do you get the cornbread pan?
The cornbread pan I got from, it's actually on Amazon. It's like a Wilton mini loaf pan. So I have that, I believe, in my Amazon storefront. There's a link on our page for that. And then the broccoli needs just about, since it's on 350, about 10 minutes to get to it, but I'll know when it has a nice vibrant color. So we mixed all of our spices together with about a 1/3 cup of olive oil, and then I really coated each one of my game hens, you know, front, back, and in the cavity with that seasoning. And then I added 2 cups of chicken broth to the bottom of my pan. Just make sure when you're pouring it on, you don't pour it on top of the birds to push off those spices, because you want those flavors here. But as you see, we're gonna do this little basting through it, and then we're gonna pop them in for their final cook-off on there. But they're getting so much flavor. But again, they are super cute. And they're perfect for like if you're throwing a little dinner party, you have just like an individual hen for each person. And they're just wonderful. And these cook for about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Slide this guy right back in there.
Jenny says she had one of those at Dixie Stampede last night.
Oh, I love the Dixie Stampede on there. Let me turn off my timer here. I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes because that's when our broccoli should be about done. But yes, they're so good. They're so delicious. And the Dixie Stampede's amazing. Oh no.
And do you put any stuffing in them?
I do not stuff them, although you can stuff them. If you stuff them, they're gonna take a little bit longer to cook up, and they don't cook quite as evenly. The reason I don't also stuff them is they have very small cavities, so you can't really put in there. Now, if you wanted to put like something aromatic like herbs and garlic and lemon, that is wonderful in there. I didn't use lemon in my seasoning today, but I did take the seasoning blend paste and I rubbed it all inside the cavity of the bird so that it would have all that flavor. But putting stuff in it will increase the cooking time on there, and so I prefer without. We're gonna make our honey butter for our garlic bread here in just a second, but I wanna just toss my carrots.
That's cornbread.
Cornbread. You know me. I think if you counted up how many times I say something crazy or wrong, it's probably every 5th word. My kids always make fun of me for like, oh, you said this, and I'm like, you know what I meant. And now I always wonder, you know, my mom growing up used to always call us by like the wrong name all the time. And I was like, gosh, is it that hard for her to remember our names? And now I sit there and I do the exact same thing. I mix all the kids' names up, even throw in a dog here and there. Or, which is really weird, I'll throw in my siblings' names when I'm talking to my kids. I'll be like, oh, you know, I'll say my brother's name instead of my son's name, and I'm like, this is so weird.
Are these recipes on your page?
So we upload all of our lives to the link on our page, so you can always recreate by rewatching our live videos. We also add, for our members, we send out recipe cards every week, about 3 recipe cards each week for it. This is a recipe card that we have out for our member in there, so we do have that available for them, but we do have the lives for everyone available. And I think tomorrow we'll be sending out recipe cards. Our next batch, we should have 3 of them out there. I tried to pick recipes from the previous week that we cooked up. And I think I might make our Cornish game hens a recipe card, because that is something unusual that people may not know how to cook, but is really easy and delicious. We're gonna put in about 2 tablespoons of honey in here. That's about 2 tablespoons. And we're gonna melt this with the butter, and then we're gonna brush this over the top of our cornbread. And this is my kids' favorite thing. So once it's all melted, we'll brush it over. But I'll brush it, and then I brush it again right before we serve it, because the first one seeps all the way into the cornbread, and then the top one gives you that nice, sticky, delicious flavor on top. But they also just love to, then if there's anything left, they just dip it right back in there. I'm gonna wash my hands because I've got a little honey stick on it. Here we go. And let's get our carrots. Looking good. I'm about to add in our butter here, and then we're gonna do a little bit of brown sugar to kind of create the caramel, but I always wait until my carrots have gotten kind of tender. Let's get...
You have a question? How many boxes of decorations do you have for Christmas?
We just took them down.
We?
Okay, well, my husband and my son took them down from our attic, which is not one of those easy attics that you can get into. And we had 30 tubs of Christmas decorations. And then I had to point out that he left out our outdoor Christmas decorations that were not in tubs. So he has to go back up and get them because I've got little penguins and light up things. But just, you know, just a few decorations. I did buy some more already because we needed them. My children like to point out if I have a room that doesn't have any decorations in it, that we need to add more decorations. And I fully support adding more decorations. Now, my husband does not, but I still say we have room left in our attic, and what's the point of an empty attic? Okay, our butter and our honey is melted pretty much up right here. You don't want to cook your honey too long with your butter or it's going to turn into a candy. And what you're going to do is you're going to base this over your cornbread.
Paula sent you a gift.
Oh, well, thank you, Paula. We really appreciate that here.
Paula.
Paula. I said Paula. There we go. A nice little dibble dabble. And I will say, kind of really coat it on thick because this is going to soak into the cornbread and give you that really good honey flavor. So we did use 2 tablespoons of honey in the cornbread, but this is where you get that honey deliciousness. So we're gonna do a first little dabble over, and then we're gonna let it soak in, and then we're gonna come back over with a second kind of coating. So you've got to do it in stages because I find that gives you the best. If you try to do it all at one time, it doesn't give you that perfect kind of coating on there. Okay, let's start with our carrots here. I'm going to grab my brown sugar right over here and a little bit of butter. So we did start cooking off our carrots with olive oil, and I always like to start, but since we're making a brown sugar glaze on it, you really want to use some butter with that because it makes like this lovely caramel. And we're going to use, you don't need a whole lot, this is about 1.5 tablespoons of butter. And then just put it in there and let it melt. You don't need, again, a whole lot, just a little to get you to get that base of our sauce. And then we're gonna add our brown sugar. And I don't make mine super sweet because I just love that little bit of sweetness with it. So we're gonna add in about, I wanna say maybe 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. You don't need a whole lot to get it. Just you want to enhance the natural sweetness of the carrots on you. And then you're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of garlic salt. And that's going to give you that savory with that sweet that just is to die for. There we go. And then we're going to coat these guys up. Beautiful. And let that batter melt. I'm going to turn my heat down pretty low because, again, you don't want your brown sugar to turn into candy, but you want it to make this just lovely, sweet, sticky sauce that will stick to the carrots and the onions. I'll take these guys over here. And our potatoes are getting there. We're going to finish them off with the lid off. That will help kind of dry out their, like that extra moisture in there. And then we're gonna season these guys up.
Yeah, some members worried that you're running low on garlic salt.
I know, good thing I have a whole second untouched bottle. Full size too. I make sure that is a staple in my house. I have run out before and it makes me very, very, very sad. Okay, for our potatoes, we're gonna sprinkle a good amount of onion powder over these, a nice coating. This is gonna give a really great savory flavor. And then I wanted to do more of a rich flavor for this. So we're gonna use some rosemary and about a half a teaspoon because dried rosemary has a lot of flavor. And then we're gonna use some thyme. I'm gonna do about a couple good shakes, so probably a half a teaspoon as well. And these are both in our chicken as well. And then I'm gonna do some garlic salt, but I'm not gonna mix them in yet. I'm gonna let them sit and steam up and hydrate with that natural moisture coming up. And then we'll add it in there. Let's coat this. And then let's go take a peek at our broccoli in them because that should be ready. Yep. It has just about 20 seconds left. Beautiful. It has this lovely, vibrant green color. And this is how you can tell that it's ready, is when you get this bright kind of neon green, that lets you know it's ready. And then I'm gonna come back for our game hens and we'll take our game hens out. But we'll bring this one first. But again, the cheese is melted, the garlic is perfect on there, and it's not gonna be mushy, it's gonna be tender, but still firm. It's got that tender crisp like I like to say. And now let's grab out our beautiful babies here. Our Cornish game hens. Now, just like with turkey or with chicken, if you bake one, you always want to let it sit for a few minutes before you cut in. That is simply so that if you cut in when it's hot, all of the natural juices will like seize out and like fall, like ooze out of your bird, and it'll lead to a drier one. But these are typically eaten in one setting, so it doesn't quite matter as much. Okay, let's get our spices mixed into our potatoes here. There we go. We're gonna coat them up, and then I'll run through the seasoning on our birds one more time for those who are interested, because I did those off camera because they needed to go in a little bit before our stream. Let me coat our carrots here. Beautiful. So with our birds here, you start with your Cornish game hen, you pat them dry. Then I made a paste using about a tablespoon of thyme, a tablespoon of rosemary, which I crushed up, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, a tablespoon of paprika, 2 tablespoons of Mrs. Dash's table blend, and about 2 tablespoons of garlic salt. Mix it out all together so you have this big kind of powdery paste. And then I added in about a 1/3 cup of olive oil to make it enough where you can spread. And then you just go in there with your hands and you spread it all the way around the bird, top, bottom, inside the cavity, coat it up. And then I laid them each in our roasting pan. You want to make sure they have enough breathing room in the roasting pan so that they don't, so they can cook and crisp up nicely. And then I added 2 cups of chicken broth to the bottom of the pan so that it can steam cook them but still remains crispy. You don't want too much. And then a couple times throughout the baking process, you just take this juice, that chicken juice and broth that's got all that flavor in it, and you pour it over your little hens here to keep them really tender and juicy and hydrated. It just prevents their skin from burning or whatnot.
And how do you know they're done without checking them?
These, since they're small, I know they cook about an hour and 15 minutes just based on it. You can always get a thermometer and go for the internal temperature of 165. I had these in the oven for a little bit longer than 115, but I can just tell by the way that their legs are spreading apart farther that they are cooked all the way through. They're not like a turkey or even a full-size chicken that need to be cooked for even longer, but we cooked them for 45 minutes at 425, and then I returned the temperature down to 350 for the, and I did about an hour and a half with these for the last one, you know, the last 45 minutes. Beautiful. We've got our spices in here. Our potatoes, you can see, are nice and tender, but have this crisp edge on it. And our carrots and our onion, our carrots and caramelized onions, look what they've done. You can see they've got this nice kind of shine on them, that sticky glaze from the brown sugar. Let's coat our cornbread one more time with our honey butter, and then we will be ready to serve up. So this is that second coating, which I always say kind of do right before. And this is just gonna give you that just really delicious sticky edge on the top of the cornbread and even hit you with some more of that honey butter flavor. And you can see the first one is pretty much all soaked into the cornbread. And this is where you get all of this. And this is my kids. This was a request. They were like, please, can you make cornbread tonight, please? And I was like, if I have it, I can. Okay, let's grab a plate here and get ready to serve up our delicious dinner. This is quite the feast for Sunday. Okay, I'm just gonna slide some things so I have an area to work with. And the way we always served it up, now my younger kids won't eat a full one, but growing up, and that was what was super special about it, is everybody got their own little hen. Nobody really finished a whole hen, but that was what was presented. It was always so cute. Okay, let me grab a spatula and some tongs. Let me grab that. That way we have a way to get everything out. Okay. For dinner tonight, we have our delicious Cornish game hens that we've roasted in the oven. We seasoned up with paprika, garlic salt, onion powder, thyme, rosemary, and roasted with broth. We're gonna serve it up with our herb fried potatoes with rosemary and thyme that again have just the great flavors that are in our chicken. Some garlic, Parmesan broccoli, let me pop that over there, with where we melted our butter with garlic and we dripped it over. Caramelized carrots and onions with brown sugar and a little bit of garlic salt just to add that bit of sweet and delicious flavor. And then, of course, we cannot forget our scrumptious honey butter cornbread where we drizzled it, brushed it with that nice honey butter glaze for that just extra pop of flavor. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do have all of our lives posted on the link on our page, so you can always watch and recreate these recipes for us at home. We also have our link to our Amazon storefront. I realized I just said the same thing. To our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I believe I have my mini loaf pan in there, as well as my fried potatoes and my carrots and or my.
Time to go.
Oh, I have my pans in there, so check it out, guys. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.